The projector hummed to life, casting a pale blue glow across the restaurant's private dining room. 50 faces turned toward the screen. Marcus's colleagues, our families, friends who'd toasted our marriage 6 months earlier. My husband stood at the head of the table, that golden boy smile still plastered across his face, completely unaware that the birthday surprise I'd promised him was about to detonate his entire world. "Before we sing Happy Birthday," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake rumbling through my chest, "I want to share something special with everyone here tonight." Marcus beamed. He loved being the center of attention, always had. That's what I'd counted on. The first image appeared, a screenshot of a text message thread. Marcus's contact name at the top, Tasha's responses below, the timestamp, 2 weeks before our wedding. I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel alive in ways she never could. I watched the color drain from Marcus's face as recognition dawned. His eyes darted to mine, then to Tasha sitting 3 seats down, her champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. The room had gone completely silent except for the air conditioning vent whistling somewhere above us. "This is my husband," I continued, my finger hovering over the laptop trackpad. "And this is my best friend, former best friend, Tasha Green, who, as it turns out, have been having an affair for the past 8 months," someone gasped. I couldn't tell who. My focus was locked on Marcus, watching him try to formulate words, watching the careful mask he wore crack down the middle. Click. Another image. Bank statements showing transfers to an account in Tasha's name, $15,000 over 6 months, pulled from our joint savings. The savings I'd thought we were building toward buying a house. Click. Hotel. Receipts from Charleston the weekend Marcus said he had that emergency client meeting. The same weekend Tasha posted Instagram stories about a solo retreat to find herself. Click. Photos, dozens of them. Marcus's hand on the small of Tasha's back at a rooftop bar, their fingers intertwined under a restaurant table. A kiss captured in the reflection of a car window. My mother-in-law made a sound like a wounded animal. Marcus's father pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a screech that made everyone flinch. "Aisha," Marcus finally managed, his voice cracking on my name. "Baby, please, this isn't... We can talk about this privately." Privately. I let out a laugh that didn't sound like it came from my body. "Like you and Tasha talked privately? In hotel rooms I helped pay for. On the phone while I was sleeping next to you?" Tasha stood abruptly, her chair tipping backward. "You're insane. You've completely lost your... Sit down." Detective Lena Brooks emerged from the shadows near the kitchen entrance, her retired police badge still commanding authority. "Both of you. Because we're just getting started." I clicked to the next slide. A document I'd discovered 2 weeks ago. The one that had finally broken something fundamental inside me. A property deed. A condo in Buckhead, purchased 4 months after our wedding. Listed owners, Marcus Reed and Tasha Green. They'd been building a life together. While I picked out china patterns and argued with the wedding planner about centerpieces, they'd been planning their future. Our marriage had been a performance, and I'd been the only one who didn't know she was acting. The room erupted. Voices overlapping. Someone crying. Marcus's brother lunging forward before his father grabbed his arm. But I stood perfectly still at the front of the room, watching the chaos unfold with the strange calm of someone who'd already died and been resurrected, because that's what the past 3 months had done. Killed the woman who believed in fairy tales and rebuilt her into something sharper. Something that couldn't be broken twice. "Happy birthday, Marcus," I whispered, though no one could hear me over the noise. "Welcome to your reckoning. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. What city are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. There's something powerful about knowing we're all connected no matter where we are, by stories that need to be told. Now let me take you back to where this all began. The morning of my wedding, I woke up crying. Not the gentle, joyful tears brides are supposed to shed. The ugly kind. The kind that leave your face swollen and your heart feeling like it's trying to claw its way out of your chest. I told myself it was just nerves, just the overwhelming magnitude of promising forever to another human being. My mother found me in the bathroom of the bridal suite, mascara already running, and wrapped her arms around me without saying a word. "It's normal to be scared, baby girl," she murmured into my hair. Marriage is terrifying, but Marcus loves you. Anyone can see that. I wanted to believe her. God, how desperately I wanted to believe her. The truth is, I'd started noticing things months before. Small inconsistencies that my mind kept trying to rationalize away. The way Marcus's phone was suddenly password protected after 3 years of lying face up on our coffee table. How he'd started going to the gym at odd hours, always looking freshly showered when he returned but never smelling like sweat. The business trips that multiplied like rabbits, each one more urgent than the last. But every time doubt crept in, Tasha was there to shut it down. "Girl, you're being paranoid," she'd say, laughing over Sunday brunch at our favorite spot in Virginia Highland. "Marcus worships the ground you walk on. Some women would kill for a man that devoted." Tasha had been my best friend since college. We'd been roommates at Spelman, survived terrible boyfriends and worse hangovers together, built our adult lives parallel to each other. She was supposed to be my maid of honor, the person who stood beside me as I entered the most important commitment of my life. I trusted her the way you trust gravity, never imagining it might one day fail. The wedding ceremony itself passed in a blur of orchestrated beauty. Piedmont Park had never looked more stunning, white roses and gold accents everywhere, the Atlanta skyline providing a backdrop that took everyone's breath away. I'd spent 18 months planning every detail, working with vendors and agonizing over color schemes and seating charts. My design background meant I couldn't just have a wedding. I needed to create an experience, a visual story that would live in people's memories. Marcus looked devastating in his custom navy suit, his eyes bright with what I thought was love when I walked down the aisle. My father's hand trembled on my arm and I squeezed it, trying to send him reassurance I didn't feel. When Marcus took my hands and said his vows, his voice cracked with emotion, and I heard several guests sniffle. "Aisha Coleman," he said, staring into my eyes with an intensity that made my knees weak. "You are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Your strength, your creativity, your heart, you've made me a better man. I promise to protect you, honor you, and choose you every single day for the rest of my life." Later, I would remember those words and taste bile. The reception was everything I'd envisioned, a perfect blend of elegance and celebration. Our first dance was to Anthony Hamilton's "The Point of It All," and as Marcus spun me across the floor, I tried to lose myself in the moment, to silence the small voice in my head that kept whispering that something felt wrong. That's when I saw it. Just a flash, really. Marcus's hand sliding down Tasha's back as they passed each other near the bar, lingering a second too long. Her looking up at him through her lashes, that particular smile I'd seen her use on men she wanted to seduce, the way they moved apart quickly, guiltily, when they noticed me watching. My feet kept moving through the choreographed steps we'd learned in dance class, but my mind had stopped, stuck on that single moment. I told myself I'd imagined it, wedding day stress, too much champagne on an empty stomach, but the sick feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Throughout the night, I found myself watching them. Marcus bringing Tasha a drink without her asking. Tasha touching his arm when she laughed at his jokes, her fingers lingering. The way they seemed to always know where the other was in the room, like magnets pulled toward each other even as they pretended to stay apart. During the toasts, Tasha stood in her emerald bridesmaid dress and spoke about our friendship, about how she'd watched me fall in love with Marcus and had never seen me happier. Her voice caught with emotion, and several people dabbed at their eyes. I sat there smiling, my hand in Marcus's, wondering if I was losing my mind. To Aisha and Marcus, Tasha raised her glass, making eye contact with my new husband for just a beat too long. "May your love story be everything you both deserve." The way she emphasized "deserve" made something cold slither down my spine. Later, much later, after the cake had been cut, and the bouquet tossed, and the sparkler exit photographed, I was in the bridal suite touching up my makeup when I overheard 2 guests talking in the hallway outside. I didn't recognize their voices, probably friends of Marcus's family. "Did you see them in the parking lot before the ceremony?" one woman said, her voice carrying that particular tone of scandalous gossip. "Marcus and that bridesmaid? The pretty one with the short hair?" "The maid of honor?" her companion asked. "Yeah, her." They were in his car for like 20 minutes. I only noticed because I was trying to find my own car and got lost. When they got out, her lipstick was smudged. No. On his wedding day? That's too messy even for... Their voices faded as they moved away. But I stood frozen in front of the mirror, my reflection staring back at me with eyes that suddenly seemed to belong to a stranger. My hands gripped the edge of the vanity so hard my knuckles went pale. This couldn't be happening. Not on my wedding day. Not with my best friend. Not with the man who'd just vowed before God and everyone we knew to forsake all others. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run after those women and demand they repeat everything, tell me every detail, confirm that I wasn't crazy. But instead, I did what I'd been trained to do my whole life. I smoothed down my dress, fixed my lipstick, and walked back out into the reception with a smile painted across my face. Marcus pulled me close for another slow dance, and I let him, feeling his heart beat against my cheek and wondering if it had ever really belonged to me at all. Across the room, Tasha caught my eye and blew me a kiss, her smile wide and warm and completely betraying nothing. That night, in the luxury hotel suite Marcus had booked for our wedding night, he made love to me with a desperate intensity that might have seemed romantic if I hadn't kept seeing that image of his hand on Tasha's back, kept hearing those women's voices talking about smudged lipstick. Afterward, while he slept beside me, his arm thrown across my waist, I stared at the ceiling and felt the first crack form in my heart. By morning it would become a chasm, but that night I was still the woman who wanted to believe in love, in loyalty, in the sanctity of the promises we'd just made. I was still the woman who could be betrayed. The Monday after our wedding, I went back to work at my design studio in Midtown like nothing had happened. What else was I supposed to do? Cancel my client meetings because I suspected my husband of cheating with my best friend based on overheard gossip and a few strange looks? I'd sound insane. I felt insane. My business, Coleman Creative Agency, occupied a small but beautifully renovated space on Peachtree Street. I'd built it from nothing. Started freelancing from my bedroom 5 years ago. Slowly accumulated clients. Hired my first employee 2 years back. The walls were covered in brand identities I'd created, websites I'd designed, success stories I'd built with my own hands. This was my sanctuary, the place where I was completely in control. Except I wasn't in control of anything anymore. "Girl, you're supposed to be glowing," my assistant Maya said, setting a coffee on my desk. "Instead, you look like you haven't slept in days." She wasn't wrong. I'd spent the entire honeymoon in Barbados pretending everything was fine while mentally cataloging every time Marcus checked his phone, every moment he seemed distracted, every excuse he made to step away and take a call. We'd had sex every night, because that's what newlyweds do. But I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, analyzing his movements for signs of guilt. "Just adjusting to married life," I said, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. The week crawled by. I threw myself into work, redesigning a website for a local nonprofit, creating a brand identity for a new restaurant in Grant Park. But my mind kept drifting, to that parking lot encounter, to the way Tasha and Marcus had moved around each other at the reception, to the sick certainty growing in my gut that something was very, very wrong. Wednesday evening, Marcus texted that he'd be home late, client dinner. I sat in our living room, in the apartment we'd shared for 2 years and had planned to move out of once we bought a house, and felt the walls closing in. Without thinking, I picked up his iPad from the coffee table. We'd always shared devices casually before. He'd never cared about privacy. The password screen popped up. 6 digits. I tried our anniversary. Wrong. His birthday, wrong. My birthday, wrong. After the 3rd attempt, it locked me out. When had he changed it, and why? I heard my mother's voice in my head. "Don't go looking for trouble, Aisha. If you don't trust your husband, you shouldn't have married him." But that was the problem. I had trusted him. I'd trusted him completely, and now that trust felt like quicksand, pulling me under. Thursday afternoon, Tasha called. We hadn't spoken since the wedding beyond a few text exchanges. Hearing her voice sent a physical jolt through my body, half longing for my best friend and half revulsion at what I suspected her of. "Hey, bride, I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever. Want to grab lunch this weekend? I'm dying to hear all about Barbados." Her voice was exactly the same. Warm, enthusiastic, with that slight rasp that made her sound perpetually amused. This was the woman who'd held me when my father was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago, who'd helped me move into my first apartment, who'd celebrated every business milestone with me. Could that person really be sleeping with my husband? Sure, I heard myself say. Saturday? Our usual spot? Perfect, miss you, love. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone for so long that Maya knocked on my office door to make sure I was okay. I wasn't okay. I was drowning, and I couldn't tell anyone because I had no proof. Just a growing dread that consumed more of me each day. Saturday morning. I arrived at the cafe in Virginia Highland 20 minutes early, ordering an oat milk latte I didn't drink and sitting at our usual corner table. I'd rehearsed this 100 times in my head, how I'd bring it up casually, watch her reaction, gauge her honesty. But when Tasha walked in wearing ripped jeans and an off-shoulder sweater that showed off her collarbones, all my planned words evaporated. She hugged me tight, smelling of the Chanel perfume I'd given her for Christmas. Look at you, Mrs. Reed. How does it feel? Different, I said, which was the only honest thing I'd said in days. We ordered food, avocado toast for her, a breakfast sandwich for me that I wouldn't be able to eat. The conversation started normally enough. Tasha talking about a brand partnership she'd just landed, me describing the beaches in Barbados. But I kept studying her face, looking for cracks in the facade, for any sign that she was lying. So, she said, sipping her matcha latte, has married life changed anything? You and Marcus seem even more in love than before, if that's possible. There it was, an opening. My heart started racing. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Her expression remained perfectly neutral, perfectly friendly. Of course, anything. At the reception, I saw you and Marcus talking near the bar. You touched his arm and he... I paused, hating how paranoid I sounded. It just seemed intimate. Tasha's eyebrows rose, but she laughed, a light, unconcerned sound. Girl, are you serious? We were probably talking about the music or something. You know I'm touchy with everyone. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Aisha, Marcus is crazy about you. If I thought for 1 second he was anything less than devoted, I'd tell you immediately. You know that. I wanted to believe her. The conviction in her voice, the direct eye contact, the genuine concern on her face, it all seemed so real. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe grief over losing my father last year was making me see threats where none existed. Maybe I was sabotaging my own happiness because deep down, I didn't believe I deserved it. You're right, I said, pulling my hand back. I'm sorry. Wedding stress, I guess. It just all happened so fast, and now I'm married and it's this huge permanent thing. Hey. Tasha's voice went soft. It's normal to freak out a little. Marriage is scary. But you chose right. Marcus is one of the good ones. The way she said his name, Marcus, with a particular warmth, a familiarity that went beyond friendship by proxy. Or was I imagining that too? We finished lunch making small talk about her upcoming brand deals and my upcoming projects. When we hugged goodbye on the sidewalk, she held on an extra second. I love you, Aisha. Don't forget that. You're my person. I walked back to my car feeling more confused than ever. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was destroying my own happiness with paranoid delusions. Maybe. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You deserve to know the truth. Check your husband's Venmo transactions from the past 6 months. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, people flowing around me like I was a stone in a stream. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Someone who's watched this go on too long. Check the transactions. The message came through as delivered but not read, which meant the person had blocked me immediately after sending it. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought I might be having a heart attack. This was real. Whatever I'd been sensing, suspecting, trying to rationalize away, it was real enough that someone else had noticed, someone who cared enough to tell me. I sat in my car with shaking hands and opened the Venmo app. Marcus and I had connected accounts, one of those little intimacy gestures that seemed romantic at the time. I scrolled through his transaction history, my eyes scanning for anything unusual. There. 3 months ago. Dinner, sent to Tasha. 150, 2 months ago. Best night, sent to Tasha. 206 weeks ago. Your everything, sent to Tasha. $175, the most recent was from 2 days before our wedding. Can't wait to see you, sent to Tasha. $300, the payment descriptions were intimate. Romantic, the kind of messages you send to a lover, not a friend. And the amounts. Marcus was generous, but these were significant sums, especially when combined with our wedding expenses. Money we'd supposedly been saving. I sat in that parking lot for over an hour, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. Each transaction was time-stamped, many from evenings when Marcus said he was working late or at the gym. The evidence was there, undeniable. A digital trail of betrayal spelled out in dollar signs and emoji hearts. When I finally drove home, Marcus was on the couch watching basketball, beer in hand, looking completely at ease. He smiled when I walked in, that same warm smile I'd fallen in love with 4 years ago. "Hey, baby, how was lunch with Tasha?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. "It was good, really good." He went back to the game, completely unaware that I'd just discovered his lies. Or maybe he wasn't unaware. Maybe he was just that confident I'd never look, that I'd never question, that I'd remain the trusting wife forever. He'd miscalculated. That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I lay awake planning my next move. The paranoid wife had died that afternoon in a parking lot on Virginia Highland. Someone new had been born. Someone methodical. Someone patient. Someone willing to dig until she found every last secret. I wouldn't confront him yet. Confrontation was what the old Aisha would do, the woman who believed in communication and honesty and working things out. But that woman was gone, killed by Venmo transactions and smudged lipstick and hands that lingered too long on forbidden skin. The new Aisha was done believing in fairy tales. The new Aisha was going to investigate. I became a ghost in my own life, present but not present, smiling but not feeling, making love to my husband while mentally documenting every inconsistency, every lie, every moment that didn't add up. Marcus noticed nothing. That's what hurt almost as much as the betrayal. Itself, how easy it was for me to deceive him because he'd never really been paying attention in the first place. The Monday after, discovering the Venmo transactions, I drove to a FedEx office in Buckhead, far from my usual haunts. Using cash, I created a new email address and social media profiles under the name Jasmine Taylor. Generic enough to be forgettable, black enough to blend into Atlanta's social media landscape. I gave Jasmine a carefully curated backstory: marketing professional, new to Atlanta, interested in fashion and finance. The kind of person who might naturally follow both Tasha's influencer account and cross paths with Marcus's professional network. It felt absurd, playing detective in my own marriage. But the alternative, confronting them with only the Venmo evidence, would give them the opportunity to gaslight me, to explain it away, to make me feel crazy for doubting them. I needed more. I needed everything. From my Jasmine account, I sent a follow request to Tasha's Instagram. She accepted within an hour. She accepted everyone, always hungry for higher follower counts. I spent that evening scrolling through months of her posts, seeing my own life reflected back at me through a distorted lens. There was a photo of her at our engagement party, her arm around my waist, captioned, "So happy for my best friend," with dozens of comments congratulating us. 3 weeks after that post, according to the Venmo timestamps, Marcus had sent her money with, "You looked beautiful tonight," in the description. I screenshotted everything. Created a folder on my laptop labeled Work Henderson Project, boring enough that Marcus would never click on it. Inside, I built a timeline, cross-referencing Tasha's posts with Marcus's calendar, his credit card statements, his location history from the Find My Friends app we'd set up years ago and he'd forgotten about. The patterns emerged like invisible ink under heat. Every business trip to Charleston or Savannah coincided with gaps in Tasha's posting schedule. Every late night at the office matched with her Instagram stories showing wine glasses and dim restaurant lighting, carefully framed to hide her companion. They'd been so careful, but not careful enough. Or maybe they'd just gotten arrogant, believing I'd never look. At work, I maintained perfect normalcy. Maya commented that I seemed more focused than ever, bringing in 2 new clients in 1 week. I didn't tell her that work was the only place I felt like myself anymore, the only place where I had complete control. My designs became sharper, more confident, like I was channeling all my rage into color palettes and typography choices. Home was different. Home was a performance. Every evening, I'd walk through the door of our apartment and transform into the loving wife, asking about Marcus's day, cooking dinner, laughing at his stories. He'd pull me onto his lap while we watched TV, and I'd nestle into his chest while mentally reviewing my investigation notes. Some nights we'd make love, and I'd watch his face in the darkness, wondering if he was thinking about her. 2 weeks into my investigation, I leveled up. I hired a PI, not officially, not yet. First, I just asked around carefully. One of my clients, a divorce attorney named Jennifer Chen, had mentioned over coffee once that she worked with investigators. I reached out on my lunch break. "I need a recommendation," I said, keeping my voice steady. For a private investigator, someone discreet. Jennifer didn't ask questions. She'd been doing this long enough to recognize the tone. Lena Brooks. She used to be Atlanta PD, retired 5 years ago. Best in the business, and she doesn't gossip. "Want me to send you her number?" That night, from my Jasmine email account, I reached out to Lena. We met at a Starbucks in Sandy Springs, neutral territory. She was exactly what I needed. All business, no judgment. In her mid-40s, with a shaved head and a direct gaze that seemed to see right through my careful composure. She listened to my story without interrupting. "Do you want to know the truth?" she asked when I finished. "Or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear?" "The truth. All of it. It's going to hurt. Probably more than you think. And once you know, you can't unknow it." "I already know," I said quietly. "I just need proof." Lena nodded, pulling out a contract. "I charge $150 an hour plus expenses. I'll track them both. Where they go, who they meet with, what they do. I'll get you photos, documents, everything you need for whatever comes next. But you need to promise me something." "What?" "Don't confront them until we're done. Not even if you see something that destroys you. Because the second you show your hand, they'll get better at hiding." "Can you do that?" I thought about Marcus sleeping beside me every night, completely unaware. About Tasha texting me memes and asking for coffee dates. Her face a perfect mask of friendship. "Yes," I said. "I can do that." We shook hands, and I paid her retainer in cash I'd been carefully withdrawing from my personal account, money from my business that Marcus had no access to. He'd never notice it missing, because he'd never paid attention to my finances anyway. That had been my thing, my little domain of independence. Now it would fund his undoing. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. Lena sent me daily updates, encrypted text messages with timestamps and locations. Marcus at Tasha's apartment building on a Tuesday afternoon when he'd told me he was showing properties to a new client. Tasha at Marcus's office building on a Thursday evening when she'd posted an Instagram story claiming she was at a yoga class. Lunch dates, dinner dates, hotel check-ins. Each update was a small death, but I saved them all, backed them up in 3 places, and kept smiling. At home, Marcus grew more affectionate, like he could sense something shifting and was trying to compensate. He brought me flowers, planned date nights, made love to me with an intensity that might have felt passionate if I didn't know it was guilt-driven. "I love you so much," he whispered one night, his forehead pressed against mine. "You know that, right? You're everything to me." "I know," I whispered back, tasting the lie on both our tongues. Tasha, meanwhile, started pulling away. She canceled brunch dates last minute, took longer to respond to texts, posted cryptic Instagram stories about knowing your worth and removing toxic energy. I wondered if she was preparing to end our friendship, to make it easier when the truth came out. Or maybe she was just getting bored with the charade. One Friday evening, Lena sent me a message that made my blood run cold. "Found something big. Need to meet in person. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., same place." I barely slept that night. Marcus noticed my tossing and turning. Asked if I was feeling okay. "Just stress from work," I said. "Big client presentation coming up." He kissed my shoulder and went back to sleep. I lay awake until dawn, watching the ceiling fan rotate, wondering what new horror awaited me. Saturday morning, I told Marcus I had to go into the office. He barely looked up from his phone, said something about meeting the guys for basketball. I drove to Sandy Springs on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Lena was already there, a manila folder on the table in front of her. She looked grim. "Before I show you this," she said, "I want to make sure you're ready. This isn't just an affair, Aisha. It's worse than that. Show me." She opened the folder. Inside were property records, bank statements, business filings. I scanned them, not understanding at first, then feeling understanding slam into me like a physical blow. 4 months after our wedding, Marcus and Tasha had purchased a condo together in Buckhead. A $400,000 property, financed through a joint mortgage. They were listed as co-owners, both names on the deed. "They've been building a life together," Lena said quietly. "While you were choosing wedding invitations, they were looking at real estate. While you were on your honeymoon, Tasha was redecorating their place." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The cafe noise around us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of other customers, became overwhelming, a roar that threatened to drown me. "There's more," Lena continued. "Marcus has been transferring money from your joint accounts, small amounts. Nothing you'd notice immediately, but over the past year, it's added up to about $50,000. He's been funding this second life with your money. My money. The money I'd earned building my business from nothing, working 12-hour days, sacrificing and saving and planning for our future. He'd stolen it. Stolen it to build a home with my best friend. I can keep digging," Lena said. "Get you everything you need for court. This is financial fraud on top of adultery. You could bury him." I looked down at the documents, at their names printed together like a couple, and felt something inside me turn to stone. The hurt was still there, an ocean of it, but underneath it was something harder, colder, a rage so pure it felt almost clean. "Yes," I said. "Get me everything. I want to know every lie, every transaction, every moment they thought they were getting away with it. And then I'm going to destroy them both." Lena smiled, a small, fierce expression that told me she'd been waiting to hear me say it. "Now you're talking." They say knowledge is power, but they don't tell you that sometimes knowledge feels like swallowing broken glass. Every new piece of evidence Lena uncovered was another shard lodging in my throat, making it harder to breathe, harder to maintain the facade of the blissfully ignorant wife. The photographs were the worst. Lena delivered them in another manila folder, this one thicker than the last. During our Wednesday morning meeting at a different coffee shop, we'd started rotating locations, paranoid about being seen together. I opened it in my car afterward, alone in a parking garage, and felt whatever remained of my heart crumble to dust. Marcus and Tasha at Ponce City Market, his arm around her waist in a way that screamed possession. At the Botanical Gardens, holding hands like teenagers. Kissing in the parking lot of a Whole Foods in Virginia Highland, the same Whole Foods where Marcus and I did our grocery shopping every Sunday, walking past that exact spot where he'd kissed another woman. There were photos from inside the Buckhead condo too. Lena had found a way to access building security footage and real estate, listing photos from before they'd purchased it. The place was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern finishes, an open-concept kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. They'd furnished it together. In one security camera image, I could see them standing in the empty living room, Tasha pointing at something, Marcus laughing. They'd been playing house. While I was picking out dishes for our apartment, they were creating a whole other domestic fantasy. But the evidence that truly broke me was buried in a folder labeled Trip Receipts. Charleston, the trip Marcus said was for an emergency client meeting. I'd believed him, even helped him pack, kissed him goodbye at the door. Lena had pulled hotel records showing Marcus and Tasha had stayed in a suite at the Bellman Charleston place for 3 nights. Room service receipts showed champagne, strawberries, expensive meals. They'd stayed in bed until noon, walked the waterfront, dined at Peninsula Grill. I'd seen Tasha's Instagram posts from that weekend, carefully framed shots of her coffee cup with Charleston architecture in the background. captions about finding herself on a solo retreat. Every single one had been a lie. I'd commented on those posts. Beautiful. Proud of you for taking time for yourself. She'd hearted my comment. The betrayal had layers. It wasn't just the affair. It was the elaborate deception. The way they'd both looked me in the eye and lied without flinching. How many times had Tasha sat across from me at brunch, listening to me talk about my marriage while knowing she was actively destroying it? How many times had Marcus made love to me hours after being with her? At home, the performance became harder. Marcus was planning a romantic dinner for our 6-month anniversary. 6 months of marriage built on lies. He'd made reservations at Bacchanalia, my favorite restaurant, and kept talking about how he wanted to celebrate us. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me," he said one evening, pulling me close on the couch. "Sometimes I can't believe you're real, that you chose me." I smiled against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, wondering how he could live with such cognitive dissonance. Did he think about Tasha when he held me? Did he compare us? Or had he developed some psychological compartmentalization that allowed him to exist in both worlds, without the weight of guilt crushing him? "I love you too," I said, the words ash in my mouth. That Saturday, Tasha called asking if I wanted to go dress shopping with her, some gala event she'd been invited to. "I need your eye," she said. "You know I'm hopeless without you." We met at Lenox Square, and I watched her try on dresses, offering opinions and encouragement like always. She looked stunning in everything. A red sequined number that hugged her curves. A black silk gown that made her look like old Hollywood glamour. Each time she emerged from the dressing room, she'd spin for me, laughing, asking what I thought. "You look beautiful," I told her, and meant it. That was perhaps the cruelest part. I could hate what she'd done while still seeing why Marcus had been drawn to her. Tasha had always been magnetic, the kind of woman who lit up a room. I'd loved that about her once. She settled on the red dress, and we went to the food court for smoothies, sitting at a small table near the fountain. The mall was crowded with Saturday shoppers, families and teenagers and couples holding hands. We could have been any two best friends on a shopping trip. "Can I ask you something?" Tasha said, stirring her acai bowl with unusual seriousness. My heart stopped. This was it. She was going to confess, going to try to explain the inexplicable. "Of course. Do you ever feel like..." She paused, choosing words carefully. "Like you've made choices that you can't take back? Like you've gone so far down a road that turning around would mean admitting you were wrong from the beginning?" I stared at her, this woman who'd been my sister in all but blood, and saw the opening for what it was, an almost confession, a way to test if I knew. She was scared. "Good. I think," I said slowly, "that we all make choices, some good, some bad. But what defines us isn't the choice itself. It's what we do when we realize we've chosen wrong. Whether we own it or keep lying." Tasha's eyes met mine, and for a second I saw fear flicker across her face. Then she laughed, breaking the tension. "Girl, that's deep. I was just talking about whether to take this new brand deal, but okay. Philosopher." She was giving herself an out, pretending the conversation had been about something trivial. I let her have it. Not yet, I thought. Not until I'm ready. That night I met with Lena again, our third meeting that week. She'd been working overtime, digging deeper than I'd initially paid her for, driven by what she'd called professional outrage at how brazen Marcus and Tasha had been. "Found something interesting in Marcus's work emails," she said, sliding her laptop across the table. "He's been corresponding with a real estate agent about selling your apartment. Your name's not on any of the emails." I read through the thread, my hands shaking. Marcus had been planning to list our apartment, the home we shared, the place I'd helped decorate and fill with memories, without telling me. In one email he'd written, "Need to move quickly. My wife doesn't know yet, but I'm working on timing the conversation." The conversation, I repeated numbly. He was going to ask for a divorce. "Looks like it," Lena confirmed. "Based on the timeline, I'd guess he was planning to do it right around your first anniversary. Probably figured he'd done his duty, played the good husband long enough to avoid suspicion. The cruelty was breathtaking. He'd married me knowing he was going to leave. The wedding, the vows, the honeymoon, all of it had been theater, a performance for an audience that included our families, our friends, and most of all, me. I was the fool who'd believed in her own love story. "There's also this," Lena said, pulling up bank statements. "He's been meeting with a divorce attorney. 2 appointments in the last month. The lawyer specializes in high-conflict divorces with significant asset division. High conflict. As if I'd be the difficult one when he'd been the one lying, cheating, and stealing. He's building a case," I said, seeing it clearly now. "Getting all his ducks in a row so when he asks for the divorce, he can take as much as possible." "Exactly. And based on Georgia law, if he can prove the marriage was short-term and you had separate finances before marriage, he might try to argue that your business assets shouldn't be considered marital property. But the money he's been transferring from joint accounts, that's going to be hard for him to explain." I sat back, my mind racing through scenarios. Marcus thought he was 3 steps ahead, carefully orchestrating his exit. He had no idea I was watching his every move, documenting his every lie. "How much more do you need?" I asked Lena. "I want to trace back further, before your engagement. See how long this has really been going on. My guess? This started long before you walked down that aisle, maybe even before he proposed." The thought made me physically ill. Had he been with Tasha when he'd taken me to the botanical gardens and gotten down on one knee? When he'd slipped the ring on my finger and I'd cried with joy? Had he gone home to her afterward? "Do it," I said. "I want to know everything. Every lie, every moment, every betrayal. When I confront him, I want him to realize he never stood a chance." Over the next 2 weeks, Lena worked her magic. She found credit card receipts from hotels dating back 18 months, 6 months before Marcus proposed. She found text messages Marcus had permanently deleted, but that had been backed up to a cloud service he'd forgotten about. She found social media messages between Tasha and a mutual friend where Tasha had written, "I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel about him. Sometimes I think he's going to leave her for me." That had been written 3 months before my wedding. The evidence mounted until it became undeniable. Marcus had been cheating on me for at least a year and a half. He'd proposed to me while sleeping with my best friend. He'd planned our wedding while planning his future with someone else. He'd stood at an altar and vowed to forsake all others, while his lover stood just feet away in a bridesmaid dress. And Tasha had helped me choose my wedding dress. She'd thrown my bridal shower. She'd given a toast about the sacred bond of our friendship while knowing she was destroying my marriage from the inside. I carried this knowledge like a second skin, wearing it beneath my clothes where no one could see. At work, I was more successful than ever. Landed a major contract with a Fortune 500 company to revamp their entire brand identity. Maya marveled at my focus, my drive. "Whatever you're channeling," she said, "bottle it up and sell it." If only she knew I was channeling pure rage. At home, Marcus grew increasingly affectionate as our anniversary approached. He talked about renewing our vows for our 10th anniversary, about the kids we'd have, about growing old together. Each word was a knife, but I smiled and nodded and played my part. "I can't wait to spend forever with you," he said one night, his hand on my cheek. "Me neither," I replied, thinking about the folder of evidence growing thicker every day, about the moment when I'd finally tear down the facade and watch his world burn. Tasha, meanwhile, had grown distant. She canceled plans more often. Her texts became shorter and less frequent. I wondered if she was preparing to ghost me, to make her exit before the truth exploded, or maybe she was just tired of pretending. The night before our 6-month anniversary dinner, I sat in my home office reviewing everything Lena had gathered. Financial records, photographs, text messages, property documents, hotel receipts, a timeline that stretched back nearly 2 years, documenting a systematic pattern of deception. I had enough to destroy them both, enough to take Marcus for everything in a divorce, to expose Tasha publicly and ruin her influencer career, enough to make them pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment they'd made me feel crazy for doubting what my gut had been screaming. But I wanted more than revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted them to understand, in the deepest part of their souls, what they'd done. I wanted everyone who'd witnessed our wedding, who'd celebrated our love, to see the truth. So I started planning. Not a confrontation, a revelation. A moment so perfectly orchestrated that neither of them would see it coming until it was too late. Marcus's birthday was in 3 weeks. He was planning a dinner party at his favorite restaurant, an intimate gathering of close friends and family. 30 people who loved us, who believed in us, who thought we were the perfect couple. It would be the perfect stage. I called the restaurant the next morning and spoke to the events coordinator. "I want to plan a surprise for my husband's birthday," I said. "Something really special. Can we set up a projector for a slideshow?" "Of course, Mrs. Reed. We'd be happy to arrange that." "Perfect," I said, my voice steady and calm despite the storm raging inside me. "I'm going to create a presentation about our love story. I want everyone to see exactly what kind of man they're celebrating." Detective Lena Brooks didn't look like someone who'd spent 23 years on the Atlanta police force, but that's exactly what made her so effective. People underestimated her, saw a middle-aged black woman and assumed she was someone's aunt, someone's mother, someone harmless. They never saw the predator underneath, the investigator who'd closed more cases than anyone else in her division before retiring at 45. "You remind me of myself," she told me during one of our now weekly meetings. We were in her home office in Decatur, a converted bedroom filled with filing cabinets and computer monitors. 20 years ago, I was you. Married to a cop who was sleeping with his partner. Everyone knew except me. Or at least that's what it felt like after. I looked up from the laptop where I'd been reviewing the timeline we'd built. "What did you do?" "Gathered evidence for 3 months. Built an airtight case. Then I filed for divorce, filed complaints with internal affairs, and took him for everything." She smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "He's a security guard at a mall now. She got fired and moved to Alabama. And I learned that the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting meticulous. That became our philosophy. Meticulous. Every piece of evidence triple-checked. Every timeline verified. Every document backed up in multiple locations. Lena taught me things I never thought I'd need to know. How to track someone's location through their phone. How to access deleted messages. How to read financial statements for hidden transactions. "Your husband is sloppy," she said one afternoon, pulling up Marcus's credit card statements. "See these charges? He's not even trying to hide them anymore. Dinner at Marcel. That's a $200 a plate restaurant. Hotel charges in Savannah. Jewelry purchases from Tiffany." "Jewelry?" I repeated flatly. "2 pieces. Want to guess who they were for?" I didn't need to guess. One was probably the necklace I'd seen Tasha wearing in a recent Instagram post. A delicate gold chain with a diamond pendant she'd claimed was a gift to herself for hitting 100K followers. The other was likely the bracelet I'd admired on her wrist during our last coffee date. The one she'd said was vintage from an estate sale. "He bought her jewelry with our money," I said, my voice hollow. "With your money specifically. These charges are from your joint account, which is primarily funded by your business income." Lena leaned back in her chair. "In divorce court, this is going to play beautifully. He didn't just cheat. He stole from you to fund the affair." But I wasn't thinking about divorce court anymore. That seemed too simple, too private. Marcus would walk away with his reputation intact among people who didn't know the details. He'd frame himself as the victim of an unhappy marriage, spin the narrative until I became the bitter ex-wife who couldn't let go. No. I needed something bigger. "Lena," I said slowly, "how would you feel about expanding this investigation?" She raised an eyebrow. "Expanding how?" "Tasha's an influencer. She makes her living off brand partnerships, sponsorships, her public image. What if we looked into whether she's been honest with her followers about those relationships? Whether she's disclosed paid partnerships properly? Whether any of her success is built on lies?" A slow smile spread across Lena's face. "You want to hit her where it really hurts." She destroyed my life while profiting off the image of being my supportive best friend. Her followers think she's authentic, real, someone they can trust. I want them to see who she really is. Over the next week, Lena dove into Tasha's business dealings with the thoroughness of someone who genuinely enjoyed the hunt. What she found was astounding. Tasha had been violating FTC guidelines left and right. Undisclosed sponsored posts, false claims about products she didn't actually use, a giveaway that was rigged, with the prize going to one of her friends. She'd built her influencer career on a foundation of lies and manipulation, just like she'd built her relationship with Marcus. This, Lena said, showing me a detailed report, is enough to get her dropped by every legitimate brand she works with, maybe even fined by the FTC if someone reports her. Someone should definitely report her, I said thoughtfully, after her lies become public knowledge. We were sitting in my car in a parking garage. I'd become paranoid about meeting anywhere I might be recognized. The manila folder between us was thick with evidence of both betrayals. Marcus's affair and financial fraud. Tasha's business deceptions and personal treachery. You know, Lena said carefully, there's still time to handle this privately. Confront them quietly, file for divorce, move on with your life. What you're planning, the public exposure, it's going to get messy. People will judge you too, call you vindictive. Let them, I said flatly. I'm done caring what people think. I'm done being the nice girl, the understanding wife, the forgiving friend. They don't get to destroy me and walk away with their reputations intact. Lena studied me for a long moment. Okay, she said finally. Then let's make sure we do this right. You'll only get one shot. We spent the next several days planning Marcus's birthday presentation with the precision of a military operation. Every slide needed to be perfect. Every piece of evidence displayed in a way that was impossible to deny or explain away. We organized it chronologically, starting with the first hotel receipt from 18 months ago and building toward the present. The condo purchase. The jewelry, the text messages, the financial fraud. You should include personal elements too, Lena suggested. Things that show the emotional impact. Your wedding photos, messages you sent him saying you loved him, moments of trust that he violated. Make it human, not just clinical. She was right. This wasn't just about presenting evidence. It was about making everyone in that room understand what had been stolen from me. My trust, my happiness, my belief in love itself. I pulled photos from our wedding day. Me getting ready with my bridesmaids. Tasha adjusting my veil with that smile I'd thought was genuine joy. Marcus and me at the altar, his eyes supposedly filled with love. The three of us together after the ceremony, arms around each other, me in the middle, completely oblivious to the fact that the two people closest to me were betraying me in the worst possible way. Put those near the beginning, Lena said. Let everyone see what they destroyed. We also decided to include Tasha's influencer deceptions. If I was going to burn her, I'd burn it all. Lena helped me create a section of the presentation showing side-by-side comparisons. Tasha's sponsored posts without proper disclosure, her claims about products she'd never purchased, her authentic lifestyle that was funded by my husband's theft. Public exposure for public figures, Lena said with satisfaction. She made her living off her image. Now she can watch it crumble. As the birthday dinner approached, Lena helped me prepare for every contingency. What if Marcus tried to leave? We'd have people stationed at the exits. What if he or Tasha tried to grab my laptop or stop the presentation? We'd have the file loaded on my phone as backup, ready to stream from another device. What if they try to paint you as crazy? Lena asked. Because they will. They'll say you doctored the evidence, that you're having a breakdown, anything to discredit you. That's why everything needs to be time-stamped, verified, undeniable, I said. Bank statements, hotel records, property deeds, these are official documents. They can't explain them away. 3 days before the dinner, Lena presented me with the final timeline, a comprehensive document that laid out every lie, every betrayal, every stolen dollar. It was 43 pages long. We'd spent over 200 hours building it. The evidence was irrefutable. You know what happens after this, right? Lena asked gently. Once you detonate this bomb, there's no going back. Your marriage is over. Your friendship is over. People will take sides. Your life is going to change completely. My marriage and friendship are already over, I said quietly. They ended the first time Marcus touched her. I just didn't know it yet. All I'm doing now is making sure everyone else knows it too. The night before the dinner, I barely slept. Marcus was beside me, snoring softly, completely at peace. I wondered what that felt like. To betray someone so thoroughly and still sleep soundly. Did he really feel no guilt? Or had he simply convinced himself that he deserved both lives? That he was entitled to whatever made him happy regardless of who it hurt? I thought about our wedding day, standing at that altar, believing with my whole heart that I'd found my person. I remembered looking out at the guests. My mother crying happy tears. My father so proud despite his illness. Friends who'd traveled from across the country to celebrate with us. And in the front row, Tasha, in her emerald dress, smiling and clapping and knowing she'd known. She'd stood there watching me marry a man who'd been in her bed the night before, and she'd smiled. That memory crystallized something in me. I wasn't doing this out of pure vengeance, though God knows I wanted revenge. I was doing this because they deserved to be exposed. Because other people deserved to know who they really were. Because silence protected predators and liars, and I was done being silent. At 3 a.m., unable to sleep, I went to my office and reviewed the presentation one last time. Lena had helped me add music, something subtle and haunting that would play underneath the slideshow. We'd included video clips too. Marcus saying his wedding vows, promising to forsake all others. Tasha's maid of honor speech, talking about the sacred bond of trust and friendship. Their own words would condemn them. The final slide was simple. Just text on a black background. This is who you celebrated. This is who they really are. I'm sorry you had to learn this way. But I couldn't carry these lies alone anymore. Dawn broke slowly. Golden light creeping through the windows. Marcus stirred beside me, reaching for me even in sleep. I moved away, getting up to shower, to prepare for what was coming. Tonight, at his birthday dinner, surrounded by everyone who mattered to him, I would burn down the lie we'd been living. Tonight, Marcus Reed and Tasha Green would finally face consequences, and tomorrow, I would begin building something new from the ashes. The day of Marcus's birthday dinner, I woke up feeling eerily calm. Not the fake calm I'd been performing for months, but something genuine. The clarity that comes when you've finally stopped fighting reality and accepted what needs to be done. Marcus kissed my forehead before heading to his Saturday morning basketball game, completely oblivious to the fact that his world would end in approximately 10 hours. "Love you, baby," he said, grabbing his gym bag. "Thanks for planning tonight. I know you've been working hard on it." "You have no idea," I replied, and he laughed, thinking I was being playful. After he left, I went to my office and loaded the presentation onto 3 different devices: my laptop, iPad, and phone. Lena had taught me to always have backups of backups. I'd even uploaded it to a private cloud server, just in case someone tried to physically stop me from showing it. The presentation was a masterpiece of documentation, if I said so myself. 68 slides of pure, undeniable truth. We'd organized it chronologically, watching the betrayal build like a story, because that's what it was. A story that deserved to be told. Slide 1. A beautiful photo of our wedding day. Marcus and me kissing at the altar, backlit by late afternoon sun, looking like the perfect couple. Slide 2. Date stamped 3 weeks before that photo. Hotel receipt from the Ritz-Carlton Buckhead. Room charge to Marcus's credit card. 2 key cards issued. Slide 3. Security camera footage from that same hotel showing Marcus and Tasha entering together, her hand on his lower back, and it continued from there, each slide a punch to the gut. Text messages with timestamps, Venmo transactions with romantic notes, photos from the private investigator showing them together at restaurants, holding hands in parking lots, kissing outside the condo they'd purchased together. The condo section was particularly damning. We'd included the property deed with both their names, mortgage documents showing they were co-borrowers, even photos from inside showing them moving furniture, playing house. In one image, they were standing in the kitchen, Tasha in Marcus's arms, both of them laughing. But the piece de resistance was the financial breakdown. Lena had created a detailed analysis showing exactly how much money Marcus had siphoned from our joint accounts to fund his double life. $87,000 over the course of 18 months. Money from my business, my work, my late nights and early mornings building something from nothing. He'd used my success to finance his betrayal. We'd also included the emails about selling our apartment without telling me, the correspondence with his divorce attorney, the proof that he'd been planning his exit strategy for months. Every lie, every deception, every moment he'd looked me in the eye and made me doubt my own intuition. It was all there, documented and undeniable. And then there was Tasha's section. Lena had outdone herself here, pulling together evidence of FTC violations, undisclosed sponsorships, manipulated engagement metrics. We showed screenshots of her claiming to use products she'd never purchased, promoting brands she'd been paid to promote without disclosure, running a fake giveaway where the random winner was her cousin. If she's going to destroy lives while pretending to be authentic, I'd told Lena, her followers deserve to know she's a fraud in every way. At 4 p.m., I started getting ready. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a deep burgundy dress that Marcus had always loved, elegant and understated. I wanted to look like a woman in control, not someone falling apart. My makeup took an hour, each stroke of eyeliner a meditation, a preparation for battle. Maya had texted earlier, "Good luck with the birthday party. You're such a good wife, planning all this for him. If only she knew." Marcus came home at 5:30, showered and dressed in the navy suit I'd suggested he wear. He looked handsome, successful, happy. 3 adjectives that would no longer apply to him after tonight. "You look incredible," he said, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind as I stood at the bathroom mirror. "I'm the luckiest man alive." I met his eyes in the reflection. "That's about to change." He laughed, thinking I was joking. "What?" "Nothing," I said, turning to kiss his cheek. "We should go. Don't want to be late to your own party." The restaurant, Marcel, appropriately expensive, had been transformed according to my specifications. The private dining room was elegantly lit, tables arranged in a U-shape so everyone could see everyone else. At the head of the room, exactly where I'd requested it, was a projector and screen. The restaurant manager had assured me everything was ready. "For your slideshow about your husband," she'd said warmly on the phone. "It's so sweet that you're surprising him like this." Sweet. Right. Guests started arriving at 6:30. Marcus's parents came first, his mother hugging me and thanking me for organizing everything. Then his colleagues from work, his basketball buddies, a few of our mutual friends. My mother arrived with my aunt, both dressed up and excited. Every person who walked in that door was someone who believed in Marcus Reed, who thought he was a good man, a devoted husband. Tasha arrived at 6:45, fashionably late as always, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. She hugged Marcus, then me, her perfume familiar and now nauseating. "This is amazing, Aisha," she said, squeezing my hands. "You really went all out." "Only the best for Marcus," I replied with a smile that probably looked feral. By 7 p.m., everyone had arrived. 52 people total, I'd counted. 52 witnesses to what was about to happen. Lena sat at a corner table, dressed like a regular guest but alert, ready to intervene if things got physical. We discussed the possibility that Marcus might try to stop me, might grab the laptop, or create a scene. She'd promised to handle it. Dinner was served, appetizers first, everyone chatting and laughing. Marcus was in his element, holding court, telling stories, basking in attention. He caught my eye across the room and mouthed, "I love you." I mouthed it back, the lie now just another tool. Between the appetizers and entrees, I stood up, tapping my wine glass to get everyone's attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady and clear. Marcus's birthday is always special, but this year I wanted to do something particularly memorable, something that would help everyone here really understand the man we're celebrating. Marcus beamed, completely unsuspecting. Someone, I think it was his college roommate, whistled and clapped. "So I've put together a presentation," I continued, nodding to the restaurant manager who dimmed the lights. A visual journey through Marcus's life this past year. His choices, his priorities, his character. The projector hummed to life. The first slide appeared, our wedding photo. "This is where most people think the story begins," I said. "Our perfect wedding day 6 months ago. The start of our happily ever after." I clicked to the next slide, the hotel receipt from 3 weeks before our wedding. But actually, the real story started long before that. "Marcus, do you remember the Ritz-Carlton? 3 weeks before you married me?" The room went completely still. I could feel the confusion, people trying to understand why I was showing a hotel receipt at a birthday party. Marcus's smile faltered, his eyes widening as recognition dawned. Aisha, he started, half standing from his chair. What are you— Sit down, I said calmly. We're just getting started. Click. The security camera footage of him and Tasha entering the hotel. The timestamp clearly visible. Someone gasped. I couldn't tell who. My focus was locked on Marcus, watching the color drain from his face, watching him look frantically at Tasha, who'd frozen with her wine glass halfway to her lips. For those of you wondering, I continued, my voice carrying across the silent room, that's my husband and my best friend, or I should say, former best friend, Tasha Green. Maybe some of you follow her on Instagram? She posts a lot about authenticity and staying true to yourself. I clicked through the next several slides methodically, narrating each piece of evidence like I was presenting a case in court. Text messages, Venmo transactions, more photos, each one more damaging than the last. Marcus's father stood up. This is absurd. Marcus, tell her— Dad, Marcus's voice cracked. He looked around the room wildly, seeing the horror and disgust on people's faces. This is taken out of context. Aisha, please, we can talk about this privately. Privately? I let out a laugh that didn't sound like mine. You want to talk privately? After 18 months of lying to my face? After stealing nearly $90,000 of my money? Click. The financial breakdown appeared on screen. Detailed, color-coded, impossible to misinterpret. Marcus's mother made a sound like a wounded animal. Oh, Marcus, what have you done? But wait, I said, my voice cutting through the rising chaos. It gets better. Click. The property deed. The condo. Both their names in bold, official type. While I was picking out china patterns and arguing with the florist about centerpieces, Marcus and Tasha were buying a condo together, building their future. Our marriage wasn't a beginning. It was his cover story. Tasha finally found her voice. You're insane. You've completely lost your mind. This is slander. These documents are probably fake. They're from the Fulton County property records, Lena said, standing up from her corner table. She pulled out her retired police badge, letting the authority of it settle over the room. Public documents, verified and notarized. There's nothing fake about them. Marcus tried to leave, actually stood up and tried to walk toward the door. Two of his own friends blocked his path. I hadn't asked them to. But something in them had shifted, seeing the evidence, understanding the scope of the betrayal. You're going to sit here, one of them said quietly, and face what you've done. So Marcus sat back down and I continued through the presentation. The emails about selling our apartment, the divorce attorney consultations, the proof that this had all been calculated, planned, orchestrated. By the time I got to Tasha's section, the influencer fraud, the fake authenticity, the way she'd built a career on lies, several people were crying. Marcus's mother had her face in her hands. My own mother looked shell-shocked, unable to process what she was seeing. The final slide appeared. My message to everyone in the room. I read it aloud. This is who you celebrated. This is who they really are. I'm sorry you had to learn this way, but I couldn't carry these lies alone anymore. The lights came back up. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted, people shouting, crying, demanding explanations. Marcus's father grabbed his son by the collar, dragging him out of his chair. Several women surrounded Tasha, their voices raised in anger and disgust. I stood at the front of the room, watching the world I'd carefully constructed fall apart, and felt nothing but relief. It was over. The performance was over. The lies were over. All that remained was the truth, ugly and devastating, and finally free. The restaurant erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped, shouting, crying, demanding explanations that couldn't possibly justify what everyone had just witnessed. Marcus sat frozen in his chair, his face ashen, looking like a man who'd just watched his execution. Tasha had her phone out, scrolling frantically, probably watching her Instagram notifications explode because someone in that room was already posting about what was happening. You can't do this, she hissed at me, her composure finally cracking. You can't just— this is defamation. I'll sue you for everything you have. With what evidence? I asked calmly. Everything I showed is documented fact. Public records, bank statements, photographs. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, Tasha. You should know that, given your career built on lies. Lena moved to my side, a quiet presence of authority. She didn't need to say anything. Her stance, her badge, the way she carried herself communicated that she'd seen everything and verified it all. Marcus finally found his voice. Aisha, please, can we talk about this somewhere private? This isn't fair. Fair? My voice rose for the first time that evening, all the rage I'd been suppressing for months finally breaking through. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you slept with my best friend the night before proposing to me? Was it fair when you stood at an altar and vowed to forsake all others while she stood right there, knowing? Was it fair when you stole my money? Money I earned working 16-hour days building my business, to buy jewelry for your mistress? The restaurant had gone completely silent except for someone's muffled sobbing. Marcus's mother, I realized. I loved you, I continued, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. I trusted you completely. I would have done anything for you, and you made me feel crazy for having doubts, for questioning what my gut was screaming at me. Every single day you looked me in the eye and lied without flinching. I never wanted to hurt you, Marcus said weakly. It happened. We didn't mean for it to. Don't. The word came out like a whip crack. Don't you dare try to minimize this as something that just happened. You bought property together. You planned a future together. You were meeting with divorce attorneys to figure out how to leave me while taking as much as you could. None of that just happens. You chose this. Every single day, you chose this. And you, I turned to Tasha, who was frantically trying to salvage something from the wreckage. You stood in my bridal suite on my wedding day. You helped me get dressed. You told me I'd never looked more beautiful, that Marcus was the luckiest man alive. And then you watched me marry him knowing you'd been in his bed the night before. What kind of person does that? Tasha's mask had completely shattered. The polished influencer was gone, replaced by someone cornered and desperate. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. Marcus and I, we have a connection you could never... Save it. I cut her off. Your followers are going to love this story. The authentic lifestyle influencer who built her brand on trust and transparency, while secretly destroying her best friend's marriage. I'm sure the FTC will be interested in your other deceptions, too. I've already compiled everything and sent it to the appropriate agencies. Her face went white. You didn't. I did. Every undisclosed sponsorship, every fake product claim, every manipulated giveaway. You wanted to be a public figure? Congratulations. You're about to become very, very public. Marcus's father stepped forward, his face contorted with a rage I'd never seen from the usually gentle man. Get out, he said to his son, his voice shaking. Get out of this restaurant. You're no son of mine. Dad, please, I said get out! The roar silenced the entire room. You stood in front of God and our family and made vows you had no intention of keeping. You stole from your wife. You destroyed a friendship. You've disgraced our name and everything we taught you about integrity. I don't know who you are, but you're not the man I raised. Marcus's mother was openly weeping now, her sister's arms around her. She couldn't even look at her son. Mrs. Reed, I said gently, approaching her. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I know this isn't the birthday celebration you expected. She grabbed my hands, squeezing them tight. You have nothing to apologize for, baby. Nothing, my son. She choked on the words. My son did this. You deserved better than him. One of Marcus's college friends, someone I'd always liked, someone who'd given a toast at our wedding, stood up and addressed the room. I think we all need to acknowledge something. We've been celebrating a lie. We toasted a marriage that was a fraud from the beginning. Aisha, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't see it. Didn't protect you from this. Others nodded, murmuring agreement. Several people came up to hug me. Friends, family members, even people I barely knew. They were choosing sides in real time, and I watched Marcus and Tasha realize they'd lost before the battle even truly began. I'll give you one chance, I said, addressing them both. Right now, in front of everyone here, tell the truth. All of it. How long has this been going on? When did it start? Were you together before he proposed to me? Tasha looked at Marcus, some silent communication passing between them. For a moment, I thought they might continue lying, might try to minimize or spin the story, but Marcus's shoulders slumped in defeat. 2 years, he said quietly. It started 2 years ago. At your company holiday party, Aisha. You were networking, talking to potential clients, and Tasha and I were at the bar. We started talking, really talking, and he trailed off. And you decided then? I prompted, needing to hear it all. Not then. But we kept talking after that. Meeting for coffee, then lunch, then... He couldn't finish, but he didn't need to. So when you proposed to me, I said slowly, making sure everyone understood, you were already sleeping with her. Yes. The word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water, ripples of disgust and anger spreading through the room. Why? I asked. If you wanted her, why marry me at all? Marcus looked up, and for the first time, I saw something honest in his eyes. Something ugly. Because you were stable, successful, the kind of woman you marry. Tasha was passion, fun. I thought I could have both. You thought you could have both, I repeated numbly. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. I wasn't even a person to him. I was a role, a checkmark on his life plan. The successful wife who made him look good, while he pursued what he actually wanted on the side. I'm sorry, he said, but it rang hollow. I know I can never make this right, but I am sorry. You're sorry you got caught, I corrected. If I hadn't found out, you'd still be living your double life, stealing my money, planning your exit strategy. The only thing you regret is that your secret is out. Before Marcus could respond, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. I glanced at the screen. Notifications were flooding in. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Someone in this room had posted about what was happening, and it was spreading like wildfire. Tasha's phone was vibrating constantly. She looked at the screen and her face went from white to green. Oh my God, I'm being tagged in hundreds of posts. They're calling me. People are canceling brand deals. My comments are, being flooded with people who now know you're a liar, I suggested. Welcome to consequences. The restaurant manager approached cautiously. I'm so sorry, but we're getting calls from reporters. Someone leaked what's happening here. There are photographers gathering outside. Of course there were. This was Atlanta, a relatively small big city where everyone knew everyone, where gossip spread fast and social media made everything instant. A dramatic confrontation at an expensive restaurant involving a successful business owner and a semi-famous influencer? That was news. Lena touched my elbow. We should get you out of here. Back entrance, away from the cameras. But I hesitated. Part of me wanted to face those cameras, to control the narrative from the beginning. But Lena's expression was firm. She'd seen this before, knew how it could spiral. Not tonight, she said quietly. You've done enough. Let them scramble. You stay silent and dignified while they implode trying to explain the unexplainable. She was right. I'd already won. The evidence was out there, spreading across social media faster than Marcus or Tasha could ever hope to contain. By morning, everyone would know. My silence would be more powerful than any interview. I turned to face the room one last time. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I know this isn't what anyone expected, but I couldn't carry these lies alone anymore. Marcus and Tasha made their choices. I'm simply making sure everyone knows what those choices were. My mother approached, tears streaming down her face, and pulled me into a crushing hug. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. So proud. You're stronger than you know. I hugged her back, feeling for the first time in months like I could actually breathe. The weight I'd been carrying, the secrets, the investigation, the performance of being the oblivious wife, was finally gone. As Lena guided me toward the back exit, I looked back one more time. Marcus sat alone at his birthday table, his parents having turned their backs on him, his friends keeping their distance. Tasha was on her phone, frantically trying to do damage control that was pointless. The damage was done, irreparable, complete. They'd wanted to build a life together in the shadows while I paid for it. Now they could have each other in the harsh light of public scrutiny, with nothing but the ruins of their reputations and the weight of everyone's contempt. Outside, the cool Atlanta night air hit my face like a blessing. Lena's car was waiting, engine running. She drove me home in silence, understanding that I needed the quiet to process. what had just happened when we pulled up to my building, the apartment Marcus had tried to sell without telling me. She turned to me with something like, "Admiration. I've worked with a lot of people seeking justice," she said. "But what you did tonight, that was art. Precision, timing, maximum impact. You didn't just expose them. You made sure everyone understood the full scope of what they'd done." "It's not over yet," I said, suddenly exhausted. "The divorce, the asset division, the fallout. No, but the hard part is. The rest is just paperwork and lawyers." She squeezed my shoulder. "You're going to be okay, Aisha. Better than okay. You're going to rebuild something stronger than what they destroyed." I walked into my apartment now, not ours, and immediately started packing Marcus's belongings. Every shirt, every shoe, every item that belonged to him got thrown into boxes. I wouldn't sleep another night with his presence contaminating my space. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Marcus. Please, can we talk? I can explain everything if you just give me a chance." I blocked the number without responding. Another text. Different number. Tasha this time. "You destroyed my entire life over a mistake. I hope you're happy." I blocked her too. My lawyer, I'd hired her a week ago, another preparation, called at 8 a.m. "Aisha, I've been getting calls from reporters all morning. Marcus's lawyer has reached out wanting to negotiate, and I have to say, after last night, you're in an incredibly strong position." "Good," I said, my voice still rough from sleep. "Because I want everything. The apartment, full ownership. Repayment of every dollar he stole plus interest. And I want the divorce finalized as fast as Georgia law allows. Consider it done." Over the next week, I watched the fallout spread. Videos from the dinner had leaked. Someone had recorded portions of my presentation on their phone. The footage was grainy, but the evidence was clear enough. It went viral. Not just Atlanta viral, but national news viral. Tasha lost every major brand partnership within 48 hours. Her follower count dropped by 80,000 in 3 days. The FTC opened an investigation based on the complaints I'd filed. Her influencer career was effectively over. Marcus was fired from his firm. They cited conduct unbecoming and loss of client trust. His professional reputation was destroyed. His parents weren't speaking to him. His friends had all chosen my side, and the condo they'd bought together? Turned out Marcus had forged some of the financial documents to get the mortgage approved. The bank was investigating. They might both face fraud charges. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. They'd made their choices. These were simply the consequences. Me? I threw myself into work with renewed energy. My story, successful Black woman who refused to be a silent victim, resonated. New clients reached out, wanting to work with someone who had my strength and determination. My business doubled in size within a month, but more than that, I felt free. Free from the lies, free from the weight of pretending everything was fine, free from loving someone who'd never deserved it. 3 weeks after the birthday dinner, I was having coffee with Maya when she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "So, what now? What does Aisha Coleman do after surviving all that?" I smiled. A real smile, the first one that had felt genuine in months. Now? Now I build something better. 6 months after the birthday dinner that broke the internet, I sat in my newly expanded office space, overlooking the Atlanta skyline, and felt like a completely different person. Not broken and rebuilt. That implied I'd just returned to my original form. No, I'd been transformed entirely, alchemized by fire into something harder and brighter than what I'd been before. Coleman Creative Agency had evolved. What started as a general design firm had become something more specific, more purposeful. A branding agency focused exclusively on Black women entrepreneurs. Women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, counted out. Women who needed someone who understood that building a business while fighting against a system designed to exclude you required a different kind of strength. "We're fully booked through next quarter," Maya announced, reviewing our client roster. She'd been promoted to creative director, and we'd hired 3 more designers to keep up with demand. "And you have another speaking request. This one's from a women's business conference in Chicago. They want you to talk about resilience in the face of betrayal." I'd become an accidental inspiration. The woman who'd refused to be silent, who'd methodically gathered evidence and exposed her betrayers with receipts. My story had resonated far beyond Atlanta. I received messages daily from women going through similar situations, thanking me for showing them it was possible to survive, to reclaim your power, to build something beautiful from rubble. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Marcus had tried to fight for assets, but with Lena's evidence and my lawyer's tenacity, he'd walked away with almost nothing. The apartment was mine. He was required to repay every dollar he'd stolen, with interest, in monthly installments that would take him years. The judge had been particularly unsympathetic once she'd seen the scope of his deception. "Mr. Reed," she'd said during the final hearing, "you systematically defrauded your wife while committing adultery. You're fortunate I can't award punitive damages in a divorce proceeding because I would. Pay what you owe, and consider yourself lucky it isn't more." I'd walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd finally closed a chapter that had been suffocating me. Marcus was someone else's problem now. Specifically, he was his own problem. Last I'd heard, he was working at a much smaller firm, making a fraction of his previous salary, and living in a studio apartment in East Atlanta. Tasha's fall had been even more spectacular. The FTC investigation had resulted in a $50,000 fine and a mandatory audit of all her past sponsored content. Her Instagram account, once her livelihood, had been reduced to a few thousand followers, mostly people who stuck around to watch the wreckage. She'd posted a tearful apology video that only made things worse, full of deflection, and mistakes were made language that accepted no real responsibility. The most satisfying part? Brands had started reaching out to me for partnerships. They wanted to work with the woman who'd stood up for herself, who'd refused to be gaslit, who'd demanded accountability. I'd become the authenticity Tasha had always pretended to be, but success and vindication weren't the same as healing. That required different work. I'd started therapy 3 weeks after the confrontation. Dr. Patricia Washington, a Black woman in her 60s who specialized in trauma and betrayal, had become my anchor. Twice a week, I sat in her office and unpacked not just Marcus's betrayal, but the deeper wounds it had exposed, my tendency to ignore my intuition, my need to be liked, my fear of being alone that had made me ignore red flags. "You trusted people you loved," Dr. Washington had said during one session. "That's not a weakness, Aisha. That's what makes you human. What happened wasn't your fault. It was their choice. Your work now is to learn to trust yourself again." Learning to trust myself meant sitting with uncomfortable truths, like the fact that some part of me had known about Marcus and Tasha long before I'd found hard evidence. My body had known. The anxiety, the sleepless nights, the way my stomach clenched when they were in the same room. But I'd ignored those signals because I'd wanted the fairy tale more than I'd wanted the truth. "So many of us do that," Dr. Washington had said. "We're taught that love means trusting completely, giving the benefit of the doubt, believing the best in people. But real love includes trusting yourself enough to acknowledge when something's wrong." I'd carried that lesson into my work. When consulting with new clients, I always ask them, "What's your gut telling you about this brand direction?" Not your logical mind, your intuition. Most had never been asked that before. They'd been taught to ignore intuition in favor of data and metrics, forgetting that intuition is just pattern recognition happening faster than conscious thought. My personal life had been slower to rebuild. I'd gone on a few dates, nothing serious, just testing the waters of trusting someone new. One guy, a photographer named David, had lasted 3 months before I'd broken it off. He'd been kind, attractive, interested, and I'd felt nothing. Or rather, I'd felt the ghost of who I used to be, the Aisha who'd believed in romance and forever, and she seemed like a stranger now. "Give yourself time," my mother had said over Sunday dinner at her place. She'd been incredible through everything, never once saying, "I told you so," even though she'd privately had reservations about Marcus that she'd kept to herself. "You're allowed to be closed off right now. You're allowed to protect yourself." But I didn't want to be closed off forever. I wanted to believe that betrayal hadn't broken my ability to love. It had just made me wiser about who deserved it. One afternoon, I was giving a talk at a women's entrepreneurship summit at the Georgia World Congress Center. The room was packed, over 500 women, most of them Black, all of them building businesses in a world that often felt designed to stop them. I'd planned to talk about branding strategy, about visual identity and market positioning, but standing at that podium, looking out at all those faces, I found myself saying something different. Before we talk about branding your business, I began, let's talk about branding yourself, about the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of surviving. I told them my story, not with the clinical precision of the birthday dinner presentation, but with raw honesty. The betrayal, the investigation, the moment I decided I wouldn't be silent, the rebuilding that came after. I thought Marcus and Tasha destroyed me, I said, and for a while they did. But then I realized something. They could only destroy the version of me that needed their validation. The version that derived worth from being chosen, being loved, being considered enough. Once I stopped needing their approval, once I started building my worth from my own accomplishments and values, they had no power over me anymore. The room was completely silent. Hundreds of women hanging on every word. So here's what I want you to take away from today, I continued. Your brand, whether personal or professional, has to be built on truth. Not the truth other people want you to be, but who you actually are. Your values, your boundaries, your non-negotiables. Because when you build on truth, when you trust yourself enough to honor what you know is right, nothing can shake your foundation. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, dozens of women lined up to talk to me, to share their own stories of betrayal and survival, to thank me for showing them strength could look like patience, strategy, and refusing to settle for less than you deserve. One woman, probably in her late 20s, waited until the crowd had thinned. I just found out my fiancé is cheating, she said quietly. Your story is the only reason I haven't convinced myself I'm being paranoid. Thank you for showing me that trusting my gut isn't crazy, it's survival. I gave her Lena's contact information. Document everything, get help. And remember, exposure isn't revenge. It's accountability. That evening, back in my apartment, truly mine now, redecorated without any trace of Marcus, I opened my laptop and started working on something new. Not client work, but a passion project I'd been considering for weeks. A guidebook for women going through betrayal. Practical advice on gathering evidence, protecting assets, finding good lawyers and investigators. But also the emotional work. How to trust yourself again, how to rebuild, how to transform pain into power without letting it consume you. I titled it, Rebuilt, a guide to surviving betrayal and building something better. Maya called as I was working. Have you seen Tasha's latest post? I hadn't. I'd blocked her on everything and tried not to think about her. Do I want to? She's trying to come back. Posted some long caption about growth and learning from mistakes and women supporting women. It's delusional. I pulled up her Instagram on my laptop. I could still view it without following. The post showed her sitting on a beach somewhere, looking contemplative. The caption, a word salad of therapy speak, and empty apologies that took no real responsibility. I've spent these months reflecting on my choices and the pain I caused. I'm learning that hurt people, and I'm committed to being better. The comments were savage. People weren't buying it. They remembered the evidence, the lies, the casual cruelty of what she'd done. No amount of rebranding could undo that. I closed the browser. Tasha's redemption arc, or lack thereof, wasn't my concern anymore. She'd made her choices. She could live with the consequences. A few days later, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read, from Marcus. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. Aisha, I know I have no right to reach out. I know you've moved on, and I respect that. But I need you to know that I think about what I did every single day. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was selfish and immature and convinced I could have everything without consequences. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. About me, about her, about all of it. I hope wherever you are and whatever you're building, you're happy. That's more than I deserve. But it's what I hope for you anyway. Marcus, I read it twice, waiting for some emotional response. Anger, satisfaction, sadness. But all I felt was nothing. He'd become irrelevant, a character in a story I'd moved past. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Some bridges deserved to burn. Instead, I pulled up the document I'd been working on, my guidebook, and I added a new section. The apology you don't need. Sometimes they'll reach out months or years later, full of remorse and clarity. They'll want absolution, want you to tell them they're not the monster they fear being. You don't owe them that. Their guilt is their burden to carry, not yours to absolve. Your job isn't to make them feel better about destroying you. Your job is to build something they could never touch. 6 months ago, I'd been a woman clinging to a marriage that was already dead, too afraid to face the truth. Now I was someone different. Someone who'd stared down betrayal and emerged not just surviving, but thriving. Coleman Creative Agency. The guidebook. Speaking engagements across the country. A growing platform where I could help other women refuse to accept less than they deserved. I'd lost a husband and a best friend. But I'd found myself. And that, it turned out, was worth infinitely more. The skyline glittered outside my window. Atlanta at dusk. The city that had witnessed my destruction and my rebuilding. I raised my glass of wine in a silent toast to the woman I used to be, the one who'd believed in fairy tales and happy endings. She'd been beautiful in her innocence. But the woman I'd become, scarred, strategic, unbreakable, she was magnificent. My phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Proud of you, kid. Dinner this week?" I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. I'm buying." Then I returned to my guidebook, to the work of helping others find their way through darkness I'd already navigated. Because that's what you do when you survive something meant to destroy you. You turn your pain into a lighthouse for others still lost in the storm. Marcus and Tasha had thought they were writing my ending. They'd been wrong. They'd only been writing my beginning.